I don't want to go to DC to make friends. I just want to go up there and I want to do my job.
You will learn things about yourself that you didn't know before you started.
Even if you don't take an interest in politics, politics is taking an interest in you. You put me in office, it's my duty to deliver.
Hey, listen, we're talking today with David Burck. He is a congressional hopeful. He is in a place where he's involved in one of the most, I think, important races in the Palm Beach County, or I'll call it center of Florida type area. This would be a win for the Republican Party. It would be another seat. There's a lot of benefit and value to this. Listen, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, I know most of you that are watching this are maybe independent some way in nature, but if you're in a place where you're saying, how do we invest well into our local community? That's really the key. How do we ensure that we elect people as we invest into people by our votes, by our time, by our effort, that actually are willing to do what they say they're going to do, actually come back and be in a place where they focus on their constituents, actually be in a place where they take care of those that voted for them. This is so important. And as we see these transitional times in our country, many of you know this is not a political show. We talk about investments, we talk about business ideas, we talk about opportunities. And I believe that this is important because we wanted to have a conversation around things that will absolutely influence and affect business owners and just folks that live in this particular Palm Beach County and South Florida, we'll call it area. So David, first off, thanks for taking a few minutes and joining us with the show.
Happy to be here.
We also have Steve Snowden, which is obviously an advisor at the firm. Many of you know these shows are powered by Wall Private Wealth. We have several different financial companies helping families protect, grow, and reduce taxes on their wealth. So you got questions about that, head over to leanonthewall.com. Easy to remember, David. You know, lean on the wall.
Lean on the wall.
So at the end of the day, let's start with this. I've known you now, it's interesting, almost 5 years. You know, I've kind of watched you as your family's grown. I've seen you transition to this area. I've seen you in business. I've seen you in a place where you've, continued to kind of articulate and design what you want to do in your life, what you want to do through and for your life. And obviously this seat has kind of become available and you've kind of, I don't want to say been hand-selected, but in some ways hand-selected for it. I think you're going to do a great job with it. But let's talk real quick about your background and also, more importantly, this seat specifically. Let's just start there. This seat specifically. Why is this seat so crucial? And it's kind of been created in some regards. So let's talk about the creation of it.
Yeah, so the Democrats, they're going on and they're really complaining about, oh, this is, gerrymandering. They're doing everything that they do. They said, oh, well, in Virginia, we voted on it. Well, if you look at the lines in Virginia, everything sort of tranches down from Northern Virginia to really get that influence to turn the seats more Democratic leaning. But what the governor did, if you look at this seat specifically, this seat makes substantially more sense. Everything's centered around agriculture in the central South Florida. So I'm calling it like a charcuterie board of municipalities, but they all border these natural wildlife areas as well as the agriculture that's present in Hendry County and Palm Beach County. So there's that tie-in. This is more coherent than having multiple seats around that are centered around the coasts, around the major corridors, where you've got, let's say, Palm Beach County, Broward County, Dade County, and then Collier County. This stretches across that segment of South Florida, but whether it's the infrastructure around agriculture, whether it's appropriations going down to this segment primarily around agriculture and everything surrounding it, that's where it's important. All those communities are also impacted by everything that occurs within the agriculture segments of that district. So this, in practice, this makes way more sense if you look at it from that perspective versus saying, oh, well, it's East Coast versus West Coast. It's not
the case. So specifically the areas that this seat would be kind of overseeing, what does that look like?
Parts of western Palm Beach County, so Wellington, Loxahatchee, Westlake, parts of unincorporated Lake Worth, south to Broward County. There's a few little municipalities, and then over to the West Coast, Marco Island, South Naples, Everglades City, and then everywhere in between, Belglade, Pahokee, Immokalee, and Clewiston. So it's an extremely diverse set of needs, right? But it's all in one way, shape, or another going to be tied around agriculture.
Yeah. Okay. So agricultural focus, obviously that's a big part of Florida. A lot of people don't know that, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that Florida is a big kind of seedbed, if you will, for a lot of agricultural need and demand and growth and
livestock,
production. Livestock,
citrus, sugar.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot here. So let's jump in real quick, David, now to your background. Obviously, we met about 5 years ago. Like, why does this seat matter for you? Why did you want to get involved? You're a family man now. You're watching your little one grow. Like, what's important to you to jump in and be involved with this?
So my background, law enforcement background or Marine Corps right out of high school, 18 years old. Then I joined the city of West Palm Beach Police Department. I did everything from the gang unit to street patrol to street level enforcement, going after bad guys. Served with Turning Point USA in Charlie Kirk. And I guess I don't want to say that I love politics. No one really truly loves politics, the idea of politics. You love the ideas that fuel it. Whether you're, in my case, constitutional conservative, loves everything that, has built this country, or you're left leaning, which we won't comment on because those are, my opinion, bad ideas, right? So, and I had to qualify that for you, for your viewers. But no, look what's happening in Europe. Look at the rights that are being stripped away in Europe. Look at the growing nanny state that you're seeing all across the board, where private industry is being gutted, where there's still an aristocracy that exists. We could not do what we do in Europe. You cannot start a small business or a medium-sized business. The aristocracy is real in Europe, but it's these big brands. It's companies that are in bed with Brussels. Look at what's happening in the United Kingdom, where you've got so much mass immigration that's absolutely destroying the social safety nets that have been put in place. Same thing that's happening in Northern Europe. And I hate to say, but if Europe is a bellwether for the United States, being passive is no longer an option.
It's not an option. David, here's the thing. When you think about this, a lot of people have lived lives for years, right, where they've said, well, as long as it doesn't affect me, I don't care what happens. Kind of la, 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 la. As long as it doesn't affect me, I'm good. And, we've seen that the reality of it is with social media, with the internet, with all of these other things, with policies that have been implemented year after year after year after year, we're starting to now see the effects of them by things being exposed. All the fraud and waste, all of the challenges, overregulation, all of these things that are real. I remember when I was in Pennsylvania and I had my first company, and I was in a place where in the mail, David, I got something that said a business privilege tax. And I thought to myself, I'm in a situation where I'm taking all the risk, I'm spending money, I'm investing money to kind of grow a company, and they're giving me a tax, even though I'm hiring people, I'm putting money back in the community, I'm being philanthropic, not greatly initially because I was just trying to make money, but then as we grew, we started doing a lot more of that. And it's like the mindset of that is like, we're going to tax someone for the privilege of going out, taking all the risk and doing these things. And so to your point, a lot of times when people look at what's happening in Europe and other places, and by the way, I got a lot of friends or some very, very high level people in Europe, Monaco, some other places, and they will tell you time and time again. One of the gentlemen is an international tax attorney, well sought out, does work in 135 countries. I mean, very, very, very top in the class. He will tell you that what America is doing in the free market system is absolutely the envy of every other country in the world. And so, unfortunately, a lot of times we look at these things and we think about investing into our own lives. We think about investing into our own futures and all that goes with that. But unless we take the time to invest into people that are going to kind of vote for the right policies that are going to kind of give us the kind of freedom we need, it matters. And Steve, I want to ask you real quick, what is your thought in relation to collaborating and connecting with David in relation to the younger generation of why you think it matters to have someone like this in the seat?
I mean, we were just at the Ron DeSantis event last week, and one of the most important things that he was mentioning, Florida right now is at an excess of, 1.5 million to 2 million Republicans. And I feel like, here in Florida, one of the most important issues coming into this year is, it's just not a free win. You can't just rely on all the other Republicans to go out there and make the vote, to get involved, to start knocking doors, making phone calls. We all have to be a piece of this if, as a younger generation, if we want a long-term success in the state of Florida, which we've had over the recent years, but obviously we want to continue.
So what would be a question that you would have as a younger person for this guy right here running for Congress?
From the independent perspective, the people that say, politics, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want people to know I'm a conservative because I don't want to see backlash on social media. What is your comment to that person who, we'll call it the closet conservative that doesn't want to be bashed on? How do you convince that person to come out, vote for you, and really to get involved to build the state that we want?
That's a good question. And it's funny because if you stand for something, you fall for nothing. Like if you truly believe in what you believe in, you have to go out there. And it doesn't mean you need a bullhorn to go out there and offend everyone. It doesn't. And if they're offended, guess what? You're gonna upset some people, and that's okay. I mean, it's just the fact that if you believe in what you believe in, and these ideas have proven out historically to be the best ideas, you go out and you have those conversations, right? And you can start it depending on how you frame it. You can either go and write for the debate, which that's what it calls for, whatever, but just engage in that. I have very liberal family members, and they're in Minneapolis, and they're extremely liberal. But we talk, we have the conversations, and I promise you, if you meter it out and you have it, you agree on most stuff. We were talking, I was at the gun show campaigning, and these are very left-leaning Minnesotans, right? But he's like, I'm probably the most pro-gun Democrat that you'll ever meet. I'm like, there we go. I'm like, there we go. We got one thing we agree on this, which is a big thing. So I would say just know what you're talking about, believe in it, and go out there. It's very free. I promise you'll get less pushback than you initially think. Because there's a lot of chat, there's a lot of loud voices on social media, and they're keyboard warriors, but they'll never have the chutzpah to have the conversation with you in real life, especially if you know yourself.
It's interesting, David. I was talking with Steve about this a little bit earlier, just the idea of social media has created a new nemesis or animal, so to speak, that we haven't seen before. People that can literally get online, set up an account, be, for all intents and purposes, anonymous, right? Post, comment, share, use AI video that may not even be real, right? And be in a situation where they can kind of share their sentiments and kind of build, quote, their following based on the backs of somebody that wouldn't even stand in the sunlight themselves and publicly share their ideas. So when you think about that, it's the idea of like, are you going to accept and receive ideas from just soundbite information that you hear online, or are you going to be willing in your life, whether it comes to politics, whether it comes to investments, whether it comes to just decisions that you make for your families, whether it comes to the ideas of what you do to build the relationships with your spouse. Like if we're in a place, it doesn't mean that we can't get an idea that's like, that's interesting from social media, that's going to be beneficial. But if we're in a place, David, where we're only willing to take the time to do that and just get soundbite decisions, we're going to have some real problems. So let's take a minute, David. I'd love for you to talk about some things that you believe. A lot of the talking points, quote unquote, people have heard before. I think one of the things that I've struggled with in the past with politicians, I know that others have struggled with in the past, is the idea that they're great at saying all of the right things, but then they're not willing to actually work for the people that put them in office. And that was something that struck me, when we started having a conversation here, is the idea of like building, a lot of politicians are building for what's next, that consultant fee, et cetera, or whatever it is, versus really working for those who put them in office. What are some of your thoughts on that, and how are you seeing that you're going to be doing it differently?
So I think what happens is you have people that come from all diverse backgrounds, and they go into politics, and for whatever reason they're drawn to it. But very few instances of whether it's a veteran or whether it's law enforcement who have done the service part almost thanklessly, right? Where what service looks like day to day to day to day. Whether, these individuals come from a business background they come from a law background, they look at it like I'm an attorney, I'm a lawyer by trade, so I'm going to go in this from an attorney's perspective versus going in from a servant leadership perspective. Just saying, these are the people that put me in office. I am answerable to them. And my platform being, voting on legislation or enacting legislation with the three-pronged test that promotes and protects life, liberty, and property as defined by the founders of the Constitution and really the brain trust of that led to our country. So, that's the crux of it. You put me in office, it's my duty to deliver. It's my duty to go to these places that are often overlooked, whether it's Belglade, Pahokee, Apopka, not Apopka, but Immokalee. You go into these small municipalities that they're flyover. People forget about them. Elected leaders forget about them because they go into DC and they say, how can I advance my ambitions? And not that ambition is bad, but like I say, my ambition is not going to overtake the oath that I take. It's not. It's a check. You need it a little bit to get where you want to go, but the ego cannot be first and foremost what fuels you exclusively, because then you completely get lost. And whatever proclivities you may have, DC will find and DC will exploit.
Well, and you said earlier about the idea of you being in the Marines and obviously being in the police and things like that. So you have a real world view of what service looks like. And I honestly believe that there's some value there that's been missed in our country. You look at Israel as an example. They got to go, 2 years, I think.
2 years in the IDF.
And it's just like, some people are like, I don't like that. I like that. I think there's a lot of value of understanding, like, this is what service looks like. And I think that's missed a lot in our culture today. There's a lot of people just, again, standing from the sidelines, giving their opinion. So you've had experience there, which is helpful. What are some of the things that you believe that are going to really be impactful for you as you continue to grow this campaign? Kind of conjure people that you're a father now. You've been in business, you've been in service type industries. All of those things are check boxes. But what are some things in your mind that you think are really going to be valuable for you to kind of lead the way and really capture the seat?
Meeting people where they're at, having those conversations. When we're out there in the old district, when we were canvassing and door knocking, I would ask, potential voters to say, what are your top 3 issues? And some people say, oh, they can rattle them off. They go bing, 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 bing. Some people are like, I don't know. I don't know my issues. But really asking those questions, starting from there versus vote for me because I have this. No, vote for me because I'm listening to what you had to say, what your thoughts are, what your concerns are. And those are going to vary differently depending on who you're speaking with, what neighborhood you're in, socioeconomic brackets, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that goes across the board. So starting that, running on those issues and reminding those people, hey, I'm here for you. What do you care about? And largely Democrat, Independent, Republican, they say, well, I care about what's on the dinner table. I care about these dinner table issues. And what's proven out historically, the party to deliver those results is the Republican Party. Let's say, and Mike, I want to comment on something that you noted earlier about the impact of policy. And I want to kind of take a second to talk about this whole Spirit Airlines going under. Remember, back in 2023, the Biden DOJ cited antitrust laws to prevent Spirit and JetBlue from merging. Well, subsequently, Spirit declared 2 bankruptcies even before they went under. So that's a perfect example. You have thousands of people who lost jobs because, the nanny state, big government individuals who look for this as a solution prevented that merger from happening, which is that's a private market or free market solution versus a big government bailout, which I'm glad there was no government bailout for Spirit Airlines.
Well, listen, that's a massive conversation piece because what you just mentioned there, David, is so true. You're talking about almost 10,000 jobs. I mean, think about this as you're listening to this. You're talking about almost 10,000 jobs. There was a merger on the table from a company that was cash flowing, JetBlue, that wanted to come in and join in with Spirit. And because of this legislation, it blocked them from the ability, it literally blocked them from the ability to make this transaction happen, which then subsequently led to the reality of, it's not specifically, but it could have grown something. Who would have known what would have happened? Very likely the reality that them going out of business would not have happened. Very likely the reality of them losing, thousands of people losing jobs would not have happened. So that's kind of, I don't want to say macro, but that's in a bigger level. Micro, you're in a place where in a congressional seat in certain areas, policy matters.
Policy matters.
Policy really matters. What are maybe 1 or 2 items of policy that you would tackle from what you've seen thus far in the area that you're going to be overseeing?
Still across the country, even locally, is housing, right? Housing is a big, housing costs are a problem. Even leading up to the big COVID, big purchase boom, housing starts were still historically low from the pre-2008 great financial reset numbers. So you look at what are the solutions on the table that aren't necessarily a big government solution that are going to drive up prices, but are a public-private partnership that allows developers to make money, but also allows, let's say, for high net worth individuals to go in and place money into a program that allows the developer to absorb some of those construction costs or land costs, however it fits, to be able to make their money, but also deliver starter entry-level homes for your sort of your workman class, your muscular class, blue collar class. That's not $600,000-$700,000 to start because the numbers just simply aren't feasible. They just don't make sense, right? That's the biggest issue is construction costs. So that's like a day one policy that I want to roll out that's going to impact everybody, whether they're high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals, whether they have staff that work for them who say my kids are completely iced out of owning a home, and you can't have that. There's sort of there's obviously the financial impact of it, but there's also sort of a psychological impact. If you don't have buy-in to a community, if you don't have buy-in to the system, what's your alternative? You're going to slash and burn. It's going to be Sherman's March to the Atlantic, right? You're going to want to burn the whole thing down. You're going to vote in a Mandami. You're going to vote in these radical left-wing revolutionaries that are going to sell you a bill of goods, but are also ultimately going to lead you into sort of the trail of despair. That's happened historically, but there are solutions. There just needs to be sort of political will to get that done. Not an easy button demand side solution where you say, let's give grants and that's just going to drive prices up even higher. No, you need a supply side solution to this. So
no, I think that's huge. And when you think about the idea of what that looks like, creating affordable housing,
homes for sale, not apartments.
I understand that.
Yes,
homes for sale, and that's a big deal, because when you think about it, as you look at your family and you look at life, whether you're a wealthy person watching this or whether you're somebody kind of just starting out, being in a place where you can feel like you can have, we'll call it a part of the American dream, which we know that really I think it's stability. Forget the American dream for a minute. It's really stability. To be in a place where you can own stability is so important. And I know, Steve, we talked about that as you kind of came down to this area a couple of years ago, and now you've really flourished in many, many ways. That was a big deal. Looking around, looking at the cost of things, you found what you needed, you found what you could, and it worked out. But at the end of the day, now for some of the younger folks, you flourished way past, we'll call it the middle class. But now for a lot of younger folks coming in, or younger people or just young couples starting out in life, they need to have that. Let me ask you this question in relation to how you think taxes matter. What are your thoughts of the current governor? What do you think of DeSantis's view on eliminating, reducing significantly property taxes? I personally love that view. I think there's a lot of fat in local municipalities. I think the mill rates that they've been charging based on how homes have gone up considerably, and they're not adjusting that. Like the old government adage, well, we got to spend what we got or we won't get more next year. So what are your thoughts about reducing taxation on property values for residents of Florida?
I think it's great. The governor said it's a tax on unrealized gains. I don't think it's going to go away 100%. I think it's just going to be dramatically reduced. And it's huge because that's also another major driver of why people are being iced out of home ownership. Or even if they own the home, they go, I don't have homestead, or they just bought. I mean, I think, what is it, Palm Beach County, I think it's 60% of the fair market value, and it's roughly thereabouts 2% of that assessed value. So, I mean, you're looking at a substantial tax bill on top of your insurance, on top of your just costs of running the home. So I love it. I spoke with the lieutenant governor. If I recall, I asked him, what percentage of homestead properties make up the total revenue if you have that number across the state? And it's only about 4%. So homestead, I mean, think about it. What's South Florida and Florida known for? Second homes, third homes, fourth, fifth homes. Commercial, even if it's commercial real estate, all of that should be taxed. This is policy that actually benefits the residents of the state of Florida, right? You're putting them at the front of the front of the line. You're not saying, well, we're going to give this tax break to a Class A office owner. No, it's not.
Well, and think about this: when you have a strong home, Steve, when you're strong at home, you have the ability to add more value to other people. And so, when we take a look at this, it's like, if somebody's coming in here and coming into Florida and they have a second home, third home, fourth home, fifth home, like this is not where their home base is. We want to make sure that those that are calling Florida their home, right? We're rewarding them for being here, living here, contributing here,
being the future of the state.
That's exactly right. Think about it. If you're in a situation where you have somebody that's just here, second, third, fourth home, it's easy to dip in and it's easy to dip out. So if somebody's saying,
come in January through March, you get the good weather, and then when hurricanes come, you say, not my problem.
I'm out. See you later. And yet all the infrastructure and costs and things like that is still there to be taken care of. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one of the things Ron DeSantis shared was just the significant increase in the revenue that's been brought in through municipalities, through property taxes. I believe he said in a couple of years, it's going to be upwards of $80 billion a year that municipalities are getting in regards to property tax. And that's enough to give everybody a raise and everybody to be, a little fatter and happier. But ultimately, that's a significant amount of money that they're going to waste.
Look what the CFO did as he was traveling through these various counties and these primarily these counties and seeing how much overspending was being done.
David, I think your background is extremely impressive. I mean, you served our country in the Marine Corps. You were in a place where you served, here locally as a police officer. You were a key piece at Turning Point. You really have a wonderful resume to come into this. How does that give you the ability to differentiate yourself from the other candidates or really the other politicians currently right now in the system?
Yeah, I guess you could say I don't want to go to DC to make friends. I just want to go up there and I want to do my job. I want to represent constituents. I want to get government to refocus on what its core function is, that it's not, we're not granting you these rights. God gave you these rights. Government's job is to protect those rights. It's not to, bend the knee to special interests. It's not to take your eyes off the football and self-serve. I have no interest in doing any of that. I guess I don't care. I signed the term limits pledge. I lined it out. I said, where it says this is not a self-pledge. I don't care. I have no interest. I'll take the oath to not trade stocks while I just don't care. We're getting so far away from the idea of what a representative government is, because it's all about, in my opinion, at this time, and I'm sure the numbers will prove out, everyone in DC is self-serving. I don't care to do that. I genuinely do not care. I want to go there and just do a good job for my constituents. I want to go there and do a good job for the American people as a whole.
Mm-hmm. 100%, and the selflessness is really a big point. I think politics, world, communities, everybody today is, what about me? And that's the biggest thing that really needs to have a significant shift.
It's there's a lot of self-service going on. I think we live in a generation, or sort of in a world that's always looking like, and not that there's anything wrong with it necessarily, but if there's too much, what can this do for me? You lose sight, you lose your purpose, you lose your why when it's just you. And then it ultimately leads to sort of like a very empty, hollow existence.
Yeah. Well, David, you said earlier, which I love about some of the things, and when you're asking, constituents, people that you're talking to, like, what do you need? How can I help you? How can I be of service to you? And I think sometimes when people think about politics, quite honestly, because it becomes this world of like fog.
Yeah.
They really don't necessarily, I don't think people really fully understand how the political scene collaborates and connects with their daily life. I think a lot of people think, so I kind of do my life, they do their life. There's really no connection. It's separated. Obviously, the real tangible of this in many, many ways, when we see a lot of the fraud and a lot of the abuse financially, I mean, that's real money that wouldn't have needed to be spent, number one. And that's real money that could be used to build infrastructure.
Correct.
That could change things. That could be less taxes paid.
Correct.
Like this is a real tangible thing. So when you go to the granular level of the daily, I think a lot of people, we say it all the time at our firms, and we help families with their wealth and taxes. But a lot of people don't know what they want.
Yeah. Because
they don't know what's available. So I think part of your job, David, is really to kind of help educate people on the reality of things that they should be saying. These are things I should be caring about because it matters to my day to day.
Well, to that point, you touched upon it, fraud, right? Whether it's a fringe issue, let's say some of the fringe culture war issues, which I do believe in most, if not all, but let's think about this from a day-to-day perspective. They say $500 billion to $1 trillion in fraud, waste, and abuse. The government runs at a deficit. How $500 billion to $1 trillion? If you were to eliminate all of that fraud, waste, and abuse, why does this matter? It matters to the individuals on the fixed income when their value or the power of their dollar is consistently being eroded over time. For people that are making money hand over fist, exploiting these specific programs, that's a real issue. Everybody should get on board with that. Doesn't matter if you have it's not a partisan issue. If you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, it doesn't matter. That is a real, whether it comes to inflation on assets, right? Assets keep going up. The more money that goes in circulations, housing, stocks, etc., your purchase power goes down. $500 billion to $1 trillion worth of fraud are the numbers that I'm hearing floating around. So that matters to the senior citizen. That matters to the high net worth individual or senior citizen on fixed income, the high net worth individual who's now looking at getting their wealth tax in California, for an example. And they want to bring that to the federal level. So, I mean, all of that to fund programs with that much fraud in it, everybody should. That is not a Republican issue. That is a decency issue.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, this can all be, I don't want to say eradicated, but the process can start.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they are voting for people, and we'll call it the congressional, then obviously Senate, they're involved in these races. And because, it's not just the macro, the federal government having fraud, waste, and abuse, it's also the micro.
Yes.
It's also those local municipalities. I remember when I was in Pennsylvania and it snowed up there and you had you had salt, all this stuff, and they were just every year, PennDOT, they're buying these new trucks. These are $150,000 or sometimes more trucks, and they're buying these trucks, and they're in a situation where it's like, you know what, do they really need a new truck? I mean, they're in a place where it's like, okay, maybe that truck's good for 3 years or 4 years, but you don't need to keep buying new and new and new. And everybody else just drives merrily along thinking that's just the way it is. And I think the reality of it is, as we start to wake up as people, as you're watching this, as you start to wake up as a person and say, there is something practical that I can do. And by the way, it's not, in my personal opinion, this is my opinion. We have all of these riots and we have these marches and we have all this stuff, protests, that are, quote, paid or not paid. I mean, it's a big mess. But, we have people that are unwilling to practically do things in their daily life. I remember Howard Hendricks used to say, he's like, people will travel hundreds of miles to literally sit under quality biblical teaching, but they're not willing to walk 5 feet in the living room and pick their own Bible up and read God's word. It's the idea of absolute laziness. And champions weren't made on feather beds. So we have to get to a place where we have to say we have to be willing to put the work in. And I know that's what you're excited about doing. I know that's what you're committed to doing. And I want to ask you, in your opinion, what is one or two of the biggest issues that you may have already touched on it a little bit and you want to reiterate it, but one or two I want you to leave in people's minds of the biggest issues for your constituents that you say, this is what I'm going to focus on, this is what I'm going to go after, and this is what I'm going to focus my time and energy and effort on so we can get some of these things done. What's some issues that are big for you that you believe need addressed and that you're going to tackle?
The minutia portion of it, it's all of the infrastructure that's surrounding the agriculture there in the new District 22, whether it's roads. I was having a conversation with a gentleman who's pretty well read in on it. And because the situation with the roads is, it's very delicate when you're bringing that from farm to where it's being refined or being sold, that any bumps in the road could cause the entire product to go bad, right? The entire batch, whatever it may be. So I guess it has something to do with the soil out in that specific area. It's very soft soil. They say in Belglade, her soil is her fortune. That's the line. So that is something that can be tackled from the federal government, whether it's through appropriations that are being poured back into that district, because you're kind of in, you're in almost like a no man's land in some of those areas. Another thing, fraud, waste, and abuse, and I cannot stress this enough, that is the one thing that if tackled aggressively before the remittances are made, using prevention, there's so much technology. What is AI, for example, good at? Looking at large sets of data and reacting appropriately to any anomalies within that data. If we can get a hold of that before the money goes out, we can strip $500 billion to $1 trillion of fraud, waste, and abuse that ultimately erodes, I touch upon it again, the purchasing power of the fixed income senior citizen or the high net worth individual that's looking at an increase in taxes, because as we know, there's never a lack of more people's money when it comes down to the government. It's a tax and spend proposition that the Democratic Party runs on, and there's also the big control component. So my two things are getting out there, bringing money into that. Remember, this area used to be split between Congress people. So now this is really a new opportunity for those people to get to know their congressman, for me to hear the issues and to be able to deliver upon that.
So what do you think is the road forward here as far as winning this race for you, David? What are two or three key points that people that are in those districts, we mentioned them earlier in the show, if you have to remember, go back, but what are some key points for those people in those districts to be aware of to get you elected?
Know that you're in the district, because there's a lot of people that still don't know, because it's still so fresh. And I'm sure there will be challenges come up that are going to come up, but we feel that the road ahead is solid. Know that you're in the district. Realize what those issues are that you care about. And from our end, I mean, it's going to be ground game. It's different now because you're dealing with different municipalities and different counties that don't feel like they're kind of that they have something in common, but they do. So really, it's going to be heavy emphasis on the ground game, getting out there, door knocking where we can. Some other stuff that's, we're going to keep close to the chest because it's our strategy.
Yep.
But no, that's really where it's going to be, as meeting people where they're at.
I love it. David, any last things that you want to share as we're landing the plane of the show to talk about why someone should elect you?
Servant leadership, and it's sacrifice, and it's service. And I've done it. I've been there. I've taken the oath. I've taken it twice. Different uniforms with a different purpose of service, but it was still fundamental service at the end of the day. And that's what I'm looking to do here. That's all. I don't care about any of the frills and the fame that comes along with it. I just want to do one job. I just want to deliver for the constituents, and I want to deliver for the American people. I want to deliver for your daughter, for your kids, for my kids, for anyone else's nieces, nephews, the next generation, because liberty, freedom is only one generation away from extinction. And it's not an inheritance. It's something that needs to be earned every single generation. And there are a lot of good people who stood by and did nothing as the federal government looked, and the bureaucratic state looked to amass more and more and more and more power because they felt like it wasn't going to impact them. Because at one point it didn't. And there's a saying that stuck with me. And that saying is, even if you don't take an interest in politics, politics is taking an interest in you. And it is a one-way street, and you need to make it a two-way street.
Yeah, I love that. So where do people find out and learn more about you?
They can find me on my website, which is davidburck.com. My Instagram is Burck4FL, F-O-R-F-L, and that's B-U-R-C-K. Got to clarify that.
Got to clarify that. Well, David, thanks so much for taking a few minutes.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Stephen, thanks for being here as well. Hey, listen, as you're watching this, I want to challenge you to not just take your political views via the short-term lens of social media. I want to challenge you to get involved beyond just your phone and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and all this other stuff. I want to challenge you to get it some boots on the ground, learn some things, get your teeth wet, if you will, or feet wet, or maybe both. I don't know. But at the end of the day, be in a place where you're stepping in and getting involved. This does matter. It affects your investment into where you live. Now, if you're watching this and you live in another part of the country, I want to challenge you to do the same thing. You might say, hey, I love David. He seems like a really cool guy. I wish I could vote for him, but I can't. That's okay. Get involved in your local community. And that's really the challenge. If you're watching this and you are in the communities that David is in, I'm going to challenge you to jump online, go to his website, as he mentioned, and just get involved. How can I jump in? How can I get involved? How can I learn more? Maybe it's newer for you. Maybe you don't think it's as big of an issue. Maybe you say it's just congressional. It's not the governor. Everything and every piece matters. So I want to challenge you to get involved. I want to challenge you to take some steps in your own life. Here's what will happen, and I promise you this. As you take steps in your life to be involved in things that are greater than yourself, you will learn things about yourself that you didn't know before you started. That's how you develop. That's how you grow. That's how you find your own individual purpose. And it's so important in life that we take steps to be involved in what Dennis Waitley said, which I love, is planting shade trees under which we will never sit. When you start to operate and live your life in a way that your job is to get your home and foundational things centered in such a way that then you can reach out then and add value to other people that may never see you, they may never know you, but you've made things better, kind of other people focused for the future generation. That's how we change things. It's not changed by protesting. It's not changed by just a bunch of social posts, which can help in some regards. It can create awareness in some regards. But the real metric of where the rubber meets the road is you being a great father, you being a great wife, you being a great husband, you being a great student, you being a great person that's willing to take responsibility for your own life and get involved in things that actually matter. It's a message we don't hear a lot today because, again, we have a lot of silent social warriors that are sharing things publicly and no one has any idea who they are or they've ever achieved anything personally in their own life. I want to challenge you to get involved one day, one step, one thing at a time. David's a great guy. I want to challenge you. I've known him for years. I want to challenge you to vote for him when the time comes. And at the end of the day, be involved in something that's beyond yourself. That's how you invest to make the future around you and the future that you're in better than it is right now. All right, be blessed. Have fun. Talk to you next show.